Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome to White Rock Podcast. Comments made on White Rock Podcast and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Buchanan. He's a public health advocate with the White Rock Lead, Arsenic, and Manganese Working Group, and he's the organizer of Impact of Heavy Metals and Pesticides in Drinking Water, Why a Little Bit is Too Much, on Thursday, August 23rd in White Rock. Ross, welcome back to the White Rock Podcast.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ross, can you tell us about your upcoming event in White Rock?
Gladly. Whether you call it a water workshop or the community public health information session, our focus is really on a theme that Dr. Bruce Lanfear's developed around heavy metal contamination in drinking water, and that theme is why a little bit is too much. It's about how little differences make big differences when you're talking about heavy metal contamination. It's on Thursday the 23rd, 7 o'clock. It's free. It's at the Centennial Arena Meeting Hall in White Rock.
You organized a community public information session last year where a PhD cancer researcher talked about the dangers of low-level, long-term consumption of arsenic in drinking water. What was the takeaway from the event?
I guess there was two things that jumped out at me. But before I go there, Jim, I just wanted to mention, I was just reading today, I don't want to forget this, I was reading today in the Detroit News with a byline of today, an article on the Flint water crisis, and there's maybe 3 or 4 different high-end professionals that are referenced, actually quoted in the article, and Dr. Bruce Lanfear, who we've invited to White Rock and is going to be presenting on the 23rd, was one of the people quoted in that article in the Detroit News today. So if people are interested in knowing a little more about his perspective, they can sure go there. Two things that came from the presentation that was so nicely done by Dr. Dummer, who's a UBC prof in public health, as well as a researcher with the Canadian Cancer Agency. The first was just don't drink the water in White Rock. His summation was if of the water's 6, 7, or 8, and talking parts per million, or above, just don't drink it. And guess what? That's as far as arsenic concerned, that's all the water in White Rock. I don't think he quite realized that at the time he was making that comment. So don't drink the water. Now, I think, I certainly suspect that where he took that conversation is the reason that the city's invested, I think it's $15 million from a federal grant to build a water decontamination plant. But when you look at the engineering design, it's smoke and mirrors, and there are the numbers they're hoping for, they're not even going to come close to, and even if they did, it's not even anywhere near the quality of the water that Metro Vancouver delivers. So don't drink the water was the first thing. The second thing that really jumped out at me, and Dr. Dummer got me thinking about this, is how what we call, or traditionally we've called, genetic diseases, especially in children, right? We're finding more and more that those really aren't genetic diseases. They're actually linked to heavy metal contamination. Heavy metal, arsenic's a good example, is just like a missile bouncing around inside the cells, doing radical damage. And what they found now is arsenic not only creates the damage to the DNA, right? It literally breaks the double strand on the DNA, but it also suppresses what they call the recovery and rescue process, right? So it creates the problem, and then it stops rescue and recovery. It's kind of like someone throwing a terrorist throwing hand grenades into a busy farmer's market or something like that, right? So you got the damage, and then it's like arsenics also up on the roof, acting as snipers, taking out the police and the paramedics as they arrive to attend to those that are hurt. So it's quite interesting. We seem to have a lot of rare childhood diseases in White Rock, and it really has to make one wonder about the real source.
Does White Rock have an unusually high rate of bladder cancer?
Absolutely. I mean, Health Canada tells us that at the incidence level, at the level of arsenic in our drinking water, I think it's the incidence of bladder cancer is 37 per 100,000, as opposed to Metro Vancouver water, where it's 1 per 100,000. I mean, that's a pretty significant difference, 36 people. Especially if you're one of the 36, no, they're saying that 95% of the time, they hope with the water decontamination plant to reduce arsenic level to 2 parts from 9 or 10 parts that it currently is at, but that's still 7 times greater than Metro Vancouver water, and the other 5% of the time they're saying that they're going to hit 5 parts, and what would that be? That's 20 times greater than Metro Vancouver water. So they're reducing. They hope to reduce the contamination somewhat, but is that good enough? I just don't think so in this day and age, especially when you got safe drinking water right across the street in Surrey, one of the 23 municipalities that serve the Metro Vancouver water system.
Why does White Rock City Council resist joining up with the rest of the Greater Vancouver water system?
Jim, that's a really good question. I can only speculate. You'd have to ask them. My sense, it's the pressure to amalgamate. A lot of new people have moved into White Rock. They don't have the old ties to White Rock. They look at this little community, under 20,000 people. I mean, we don't even have a high school. I think we got one gas station. We're less than 2 square miles, and they go, why is this? I mean, it's just such a waste to have duplicate government. And I think one of the reasons that they insist on serving up this toxic stew of subterranean nasty chemicals is that it's kind of like a poison pill. It kind of blocks them from amalgamation by Surrey, because who would want to take on that kind of a liability? That's one reason. The other reason, as the mayor said, it's a cash cow. That was his reason for buying the water system. Well, it may be a cash cow, but a lot of people are paying the price with harm and hurt and disease and disorder, and I don't think they've made some good decisions there, Jim.
Is there any safe level of arsenic in drinking water?
Absolutely not. Dr. Dummer said there's no safe level for arsenic in drinking water. Just like lead, I find it really interesting. We actually have lead issues here, right? The rest of the world has lead issues at the tap, and it's created between the service line at the street and then actually the delivery line into the house. In White Rock, the reservoirs actually start, like at the wellheads. Every one of the reservoirs tests positive for lead. We start with lead. It's absolutely crazy. And the White Rock water's tested positive for radon 222, which is the part of the decomposition process of uranium, the uranium, plutonium, thorium, the whole thing. So it doesn't surprise us. Oh, and lead is part of that process, right? So we shouldn't be surprised. But when you go 500 feet deep, you're going to start pulling subterranean toxins up that aren't meant to be up here.
We'll have more with Ross Buchanan right after this.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of Powerband Solutions. Powerband is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. Powerband Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZB. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Buchanan. Ross, well, if there's lead in the drinking water, haven't they gone out of their way to remove lead everywhere else in the world?
Absolutely.
Will it be taken out with that decontamination plant?
I read the engineering report, and there's no reference to lead in that report.
And what about radon? We know radon causes lung cancer.
Absolutely.
Is it delivering lung cancer to your house?
Absolutely. The heavy metal contamination is a real serious issue, and that's why we've invited Dr. Bruce Lamphere to White Rock on the 23rd to share his wisdom. I think it's time we hear from, as we did with Dr. Dummer, and from an independent scientific researcher. Dr. Lamphere is also an MD. We need that independence from a medical perspective about potential harm and hurt rather than what we get shoveled from City Hall, which is a chemical engineer, right? That's the entirely wrong conversation.
Well, didn't White Rock Council fight in court to keep from releasing the water quality results?
It wasn't the water quality results. It was the documentation about the acquisition, and it's still not totally released. They continue that battle. There's something they don't want out there.
Now, I know with radon, for example, if it's in your water, wouldn't it be released, say, if you boil some water to make a cup of coffee or some tea? Or have a bath?
Those are all possibilities. Yep. Manganese is one of the other heavy metal contaminants, and manganese evaporates out in showers. In industry, welders are heavily protected from manganese particulate in the air because of the danger it does. Yet in White Rock, we've got everyone standing in these little shower cubicles with manganese particulates vaporizing into the air that they're breathing. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Most communities left subterranean toxins in the ground decades ago. If you look across North America, the only communities that continue to access subterranean toxins, go to groundwater for their drinking water, are places where they just don't have access to surface water. Yorkton, Saskatchewan's a great example, and I got to tell you, they do a really, really nice job there. But at the same time, they almost apologize in their aquifer report for the fact that they just don't have accessibility to surface water in a reasonable distance. So that's why they have to go into the ground. It's not something they want to, and most people have moved away from that literally decades ago, simply because of the liability, the risk. I mean, we've come a long ways, Jim. People know, right, there's that the kind of damage that heavy metal contamination in drinking water does, whether it's arsenic or lead or manganese. I've watched some of Dr. Dummer's videos on YouTube, and it's really interesting as he talks about lead as an example, how when it comes to IQ, it essentially, low-level lead in drinking water essentially moves the bell curve of IQ a few points to the left. So those who would be brilliant are less brilliant at one end, and at the other end, those that were challenged are even more challenged. And, in White Rock, where the elementary schools tested positive for lead, everyone's, all upset about that. And I go, yes, that's important, but you know what? There's 5 years of children consuming drinking water that's contaminated lead at their homes, at the taps before they even get there. And that's when children are most vulnerable, right? Those first couple of years as the mind's developing, and in fact they're most vulnerable when they're in embryo.
We'll have more with Ross Buchanan right after this.
Vadic Ventures Corp. is a potash exploration company focused on the Korat Basin in Thailand, the world's largest undeveloped potash resource. Vadic's management has extensive potash exploration and development experience in Thailand. Vadic will have marketing advantage compared to Western producers. Drill program commences this spring. Vadic trades on the TSX Venture, symbol VCV, and on Frankfurt, symbol V8V2. Visit our website, vadicventures.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Buchanan. Ross, since those meetings you had last year, has anything really changed at the city?
I guess there's two things. The first is that we've discovered or are much more aware of the lead at the wellheads. That would be number one. I guess the other thing is that the city has commissioned and the consultants have presented the White Rock Aquifer Protection Plan. Now, it's interesting. The major recommendation out of that was it actually tied to something Cheryl McCumsey had talked about in a podcast on one of your programs. That it's all about that the consultants recommended a study of pesticides coming from the agricultural land, blueberries, to the east of White Rock. Blueberry production is very intense user of glyphosate. So the city's essentially buried that report. There's been no action that I can see on initiating a pesticide study, and quite frankly, my inquiries, I just had no response to it. They just go dead silence.
Well, she had so many points about how easy it is for pesticides, herbicides to make their way into surface water. Can you imagine if it's been accumulating on the surface and seeping down where it gets trapped? Absolutely.
Yeah. The ground is very, very porous, right? And it's well documented in terms of the ability of pesticides to travel to and contaminate the aquifer. So they actually called it a moderate risk. Which to me is a pretty significant word, right? They're not downplaying. This is saying this is a moderate risk. You need to take a look at this because of the potential contamination of the aquifer that is providing drinking water to all these people. But it's gone nowhere with these folks. I don't think they conducted. There's no record of them having conducted a tests for pesticide as part of the due diligence in the purchase of EBCOR. So I think they're trying to avoid doing a pesticide study because they might be pretty embarrassed with what I suspect they're going to find there.
Does it make a difference where they test the water? I know in the Walkerton, Ontario case where people died, they tested right at the water plant, but they didn't test further down the system. And some of the water plant stuff wasn't tested, or they faked the test results. So you have those fears.
Yeah, absolutely. And lead's the best example, right? We have the lead results at the wellhead. The city refuses to test for lead at the taps. That's the real number you want to know, right? What are folks, especially young children, drinking in terms of heavy metal contamination. Testing it at the wellhead means absolutely nothing. It's what people are consuming that makes that does the harm and the hurt.
Well, it's almost like the car emissions faking. If you put an engine on a block with no load, for sure it's going to cause the least amount of pollution. Put it on four wheels and drive it up a hill, it'll be different. Same thing with your drinking water, isn't it?
Absolutely. These people will do absolutely anything to avoid testing White Rock water for heavy metal contamination at the taps. I got to think their fear is well grounded in terms of what they may find.
Well, everybody's paying attention to a court case in San Francisco where a jury found Monsanto did not warn that Roundup might cause cancer. The case was brought forward with a guy who has terminal cancer. Mm-hmm. Now, Monsanto said, we've done hundreds of studies into Roundup. We haven't found a problem. But the jury heard from scientists who said there have been just over 23 studies into cancer and Roundup, and there is a link. Is this a wake-up call?
Absolutely, and I think it's commonly acknowledged at this point that Roundup acted with malice. They knew exactly what the damage and danger was, and they chose profits over people. Yeah. As glyphosate ties into White Rock, I find it quite interesting. So we've got potential glyphosate contamination coming from blueberries that are growing, blueberry fields that are perched on top of the aquifer, and we've got high levels of arsenic. Some real interesting studies around the world about how arsenic binds with glyphosate, and glyphosate, because it mimics glycine, the glyphosate actually delivers the bound combination of glyphosate and arsenic right to the kidneys, and hence you have chronic kidney disease, right? When you've got those low arsenic missiles bouncing around inside a kidney. I can tell you, my urologist said the reason he would never live in White Rock, never move his family here, is because of the heavy metal contamination in the drinking water and what we've learned in the last 10 or so years about the damage that does to the body's organs.
Is the city wide open to a lawsuit?
I'm not a lawyer, Jim. I have no idea.
A class action if people feel they've been poisoned?
I'm coming from a different perspective. I've come from the perspective, I've come to realize that the city and Fraser Health have proven that they're unwilling or incapable of providing safe drinking water. So that's the reality, and then based on that reality, my focus is, and this is why we've created this opportunity on the 23rd at the public health information session, is that people, if you can't give them if you're not willing to give them the safe drinking water, then at least you should give them the information so that they can make their own decisions about the risks they're willing to take, and what they want to do to protect those that they love, right? Denying safe water is one thing, right? Continuing to provide contaminated water is another thing, and then not providing the information is actually a third thing. There's a whole bunch of wrongs there, but you deal with the reality. And the reality is, people deserve to know the truth about this, and that's Dr. Lamphere's specialty, right? Heavy metal contamination in drinking water. How a little bit is too much.
Ross, do you think White Rock should have, say, a water tanker truck with water from the GVRD, providing water from the Capilano for people as an alternative water source until they get this plant online?
They actually have it already, Jim.
Oh.
It's called Save On Foods, which is on 16th, but on the Surrey side, some of the management team tells me that they sell more water, either city water that they run through reverse osmosis filters or bottled and boxed water than any other stores, and it's because of the White Rock citizens across the street. They've lost their trust in water, so They buy it at Save On Food. I can tell you, I would never drink White Rock water, knowing what I know. We spend about $1,000 a year. We pay for water. It's good for flushing, but when it comes to drinking, it's just not good enough for us. Now that we know, now that science is quite clear about the harm and hurt, the disease and disorders that heavy metal contamination creates, and that's Dr. Bruce Lanfear's specialty. He's be able to talk to folks about that and give us a better insight. I think people need to hear from an independent public health research scientist who's also a doctor, rather than the stuff we're continually shoveled here. I mean, let's remember, I mean, this mayor and this council still insists that the water's great. There's nothing wrong with it. I get a little confused why they're spending $15 million on a decontamination plant if there's nothing wrong with the water, but White Rock politics can be pretty confusing.
Are there going to be any city councilors or the mayor at this information session?
I have absolutely no idea. It's public. It's free. They're sure welcome. It's a great opportunity for people to learn from, a very knowledgeable professional.
Ross, how can people find out more about your event August 23rd?
Facebook page, the impact of heavy metals. I think it's the impact of heavy metals and pesticides. You can take a look there.
And is there a website?
There's not, no.
You'll have one soon, I'm sure.
No. We're 10 days out from the event.
At some point.
Yeah.
Ross, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Jim. My hope here is that people are given the opportunity to hear from Dr. Lanfear, who specializes in this issue, and they can take the information away and make their own decisions about the risks that they want to take and the risks they want to expose their family to. But at least they have the information, and it's their decision. You know what I mean?
Plus, I'm sure this is going to be an issue in the upcoming civic elections.
I don't know if it is or not, Jim. It's really up to people to decide how critical an issue this is. There's a lot of other issues in White Rock. This is certainly one. It's one that I gravitate to as a public health advocate. I mean, I think this should be at the top of the list. In fact, what kind of society, what kind of community do you have if you don't protect those that live here? And failing to provide safe drink water is one thing, but in failing to provide the information so that people can protect themselves is a totally other thing. And that's exactly why we have Dr. Lanfear coming to talk on the impact of toxic chemicals in drinking water. Why a little bit is too much on Thursday, August the 23rd at 7 at the Centennial Arena Meeting Hall, which is at 14600 North Bluff Road in beautiful White Rock.
Ross, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Buchanan, a public health advocate with the White Rock Lead, Arsenic, and Manganese Working Group. I'm Jim Gardner.
Comments made on White Rock Podcast and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. White Rock Podcast is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.